Remember the Ladies. Welcome to episode 2 of my series, First Ladies of the United States. Today we are reviewing the life and times of Abigail Adams. Abigail was an early advocate in American history for women's rights. She opposed slavery in a time it was still the norm in the U.S. and supported advancing the education of women. Abigail Adams is also one of only 2 women to have been both wife and mother to 2 U.S. presidents, the other being Barbara Bush. Unlike Martha Washington, who was born in a somewhat rural setting of Virginia, Abigail was born in Weymouth, Massachusetts on November 11, 1744. Her father was a reverend within the Congregational Church, and her mother was a descendant of the Quincy's, a family of great prestige in the colony. Abigail herself had no formal education, but utilized her family's library to master topics most other women of the time never cared to learn about. When she was just 11, she and her sisters began receiving tutoring from Richard Cranch, a transplant from England who later married Abigail's elder sister Mary. As a young woman, she worked with her mother tending the poor and sick in her community. It was their shared love of reading and knowledge which brought young Abigail and her future husband together when she was just 17 years old. 2 years later, after a long engagement insisted upon by her family, Abigail married John Adams in 1764. John was a Harvard graduate with a promising law career ahead of him. Abigail moved to her new husband's farm in Braintree, south of Boston. The couple had 6 children together. However, only 4 of those children would live to adulthood. John Adams was not only a lawyer, but a political revolutionary, and after the Revolutionary War, a diplomat. During this time, Abigail managed their farm and business affairs while raising the children. Although women during this time had limited property rights, Abigail frequently referred to the property as hers and made investment decisions to enhance the family's prosperity. John and Abigail engaged in an extensive correspondence throughout their early marriage. These letters provide insight into the social and political climate of the Revolutionary War and early national periods in American history. In 1776, John Adams participated in the First Continental Congress in Philadelphia. It was during this time that Abigail Adams sent perhaps her most famous letter to the Founding Fathers, where she said, "Do not put such unlimited powers into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could." Although history has redefined Abigail Adams as an early feminist, she was actually more of an advocate for the protection of women under new laws and providing access to a formal education. Adams believed that women were vital in preparing both sons and daughters to be virtuous citizens and leaders in the new republic. Although this now famous letter was not taken very seriously by her husband at the time, John did seek out her opinion on political and other matters throughout their life together. Abigail even joined John in Europe from 1783 to 1788 on his tour as a diplomat. After 1785, she filled the difficult role of wife of the first United States minister to Great Britain and did so with dignity and tact. On April 21, 1789, John Adams, the first Vice President of the United States, began his duties as President of the Senate. As wife of the first Vice President, Abigail became good friends to Mrs. Washington and a valued help in official entertaining, drawing on her experience of courts and society abroad. After 1791, however, poor health forced her to spend much of her time in Quincy. Illness or trouble found in her resolute, she often declared she would not forget the blessings which sweetened life. As President of the Senate, John Adams cast 29 tie-breaking votes. His votes protected the President's sole authority over the removal of appointees, influenced the location of the national capital, and prevented war with Great Britain. On at least one occasion, he persuaded senators to vote against legislation that he opposed, and he frequently lectured the Senate on protocol and policy matters. Adams' political views and his active role in the Senate made him a natural target for critics of the Washington administration. Toward the end of his first term, he began to exercise more restraint in the hope of realizing the goal shared by many of his successors, election in his own right as President of the United States. When Washington announced his intention to retire in 1796, John Adams emerged as the leading candidate on the Federalist side, with Jefferson as his main opponent. Abigail, like her husband, had considered Jefferson a good friend and had regularly written letters to him, but their correspondence stopped once he and John Adams began competing against each other for the nation's highest office. In 1797, when Adams was elected second President of the United States, he wrote his wife, "I never wanted your advice and assistance more in my life." When compared to Martha Washington, Abigail Adams was a much more outspoken First Lady, defending her husband's positions, including his advocacy of the Alien and Seditions Act of 1798. This act was a series of 4 laws passed by the U.S. Congress in 1798 amid widespread fear that war with France was imminent. The 4 laws, which remain controversial to this day, restricted the activities of foreign residents in the country and limited freedom of speech and of the press. Mrs. Adams helped forward the interests of the administration by writing editorial letters to family and acquaintances, encouraging the publication of the information and viewpoint presented in them. She was sarcastically attacked in the opposition press, her influence over the presidential appointments questioned, and there were printed suggestions that she was too aged to understand questions of the day. Towards the end of the Adams administration, there were even anti-Federalist newspaper editorials which, in attacking President Adams for his choice of some foreign appointees, said it was evidence that he was more politically astute wife was clearly not in the capital at the time of his decision, but home in Quincy, because the president would not dare make a nomination without her approbation. In 1880, the Adams became the first family to occupy the White House after the capital was moved from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C. As a hostess, her entertainments were confined to a relatively small home in Philadelphia, turned into a hotel after the capital was moved. Although she did host a dance for her son and his friends, she received visitors formally, seated like a royal figure, as she had witnessed at Buckingham Palace. She also attempted to influence fashion, believing that the more revealing Napoleonic-style clothing that was popular during this time was very inappropriate. Since presidential families were responsible for covering the costs of their entertainment and the Adams were enduring financial difficulties at the time of his presidency, Abigail Adams' receptions were somewhat Spartan. During that time, she famously hung her family's laundry in the unfinished East Rooms to dry. During the bitterly contested 1800 presidential election, the Jeffersonian press attacked Abigail as being too outspoken and imperious. One opponent, named Albert Gallatin, memorably wrote that she is Mrs. President, not of the United States, but of a faction. It is not right. When Adams lost his re-election bid in 1801, the couple returned to Massachusetts and for 17 years enjoyed the companionship that public life had long denied them. Abigail maintained a hand in politics, including with Thomas Jefferson, who had defeated her husband in the election. Adams also advocated for the political advancement of her son, John Quincy Adams, although she would not live to see him elected as president in 1824. Abigail died in 1818 and is buried beside her husband in United First Parish Church. Abigail Adams refused during her lifetime to allow her correspondence with her husband to be published, judging a woman's letters to be a private matter. But in 1848, her grandson Charles Francis Adams arranged to have the publication of her first volume of letters, preserving forever her unique experience and perspective on American life and democracy. Thank you for joining me in episode 2 of my series, First Ladies of the United States. Please stay tuned for episode 3 coming soon.